I was barely 17 when my mother, Diana, left me stranded at a highway rest stop because she wanted to teach me something she called a lesson. She didn't raise her voice this time, which somehow made everything worse. She simply pointed toward a weathered wooden bench and said three words that still echo in my mind: sit, think, learn. I actually laughed because I genuinely believed she was bluffing. Our family never dealt in real consequences. We dealt in loaded silences. We dealt in suffocating guilt trips. We dealt in picture-perfect smiles for neighbors and strangers while serving each other ice-cold shoulders behind closed doors. But then she climbed back into that car. I watched the door slam shut with a finality that made my stomach drop. I saw those red brake lights flicker off like dying embers. I felt the rumble of the engine pulling away from me, and the movement was so deliberate, so practiced. It was as if she'd rehearsed this exact moment in her mind 100 times before. There I stood, clutching my backpack like a lifeline, my pride still intact but crumbling fast, and my phone already showing that dreaded low battery warning. I kept telling myself she would circle back any second now. This was just a scare tactic, right? Any mother would turn around. Any decent human being would stop. 5 minutes crawled by like hours. Then 10. Then 20. She never came back. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. Because what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about family, about survival, and about my own strength. When my phone screen finally went completely black, something inside me shifted and locked into place. If Diana wanted me to panic and break down, I refused to give her that satisfaction. If she expected me to come crawling back, grateful and apologizing for existing, I would carve out my own path instead. So I started walking. 6 whole miles along that dangerous shoulder, counting each step carefully so I wouldn't start counting my fears instead. Cars roared past me, so close I could feel them shake my hair and rattle my bones. I kept my eyes locked straight ahead and my jaw clenched tight because the moment I let myself cry, I knew the tears wouldn't stop. They would drown me right there on the roadside. After that day, I didn't hear from them. Not for years. I grew up faster than anyone should have to, built a life from absolutely nothing, created something that could never be stolen or abandoned. I convinced myself the past was buried and gone, until yesterday arrived. A baby shower invitation appeared in my mailbox with their names printed on the return address like nothing had ever happened. I ripped it clean in half, my hands shaking with rage. And that's when the real lesson finally began, but this time, I was the one teaching it. The fight that led to everything started the way our fights always started, with something small that was never actually small at all. We were packed into the family car for a road trip, squeezed together and pretending we could stand each other's company for more than 5 minutes. Diana had both hands locked on that steering wheel and her attention locked firmly on me, like always. "Stop slouching," she snapped without even looking. "You look completely ungrateful." I stared out the window, exhausted from being corrected like I was some kind of defect that needed constant fixing. I was so tired of watching her praise my siblings for simply breathing while she measured every single one of my breaths like each one was somehow wrong. "I'm not slouching," I said flatly. "I'm just sitting here." She shot me a look like I'd insulted her in front of the entire world. "You always have to push back against everything. Why can't you just be pleasant for once in your life?" That word, pleasant, it was her favorite weapon, perfectly sharpened over years of use. Pleasant meant silent. Pleasant meant obedient. Pleasant meant invisible, erased, non-existent. I felt something hot and dangerous crawl up my throat. Maybe I push back because you keep pushing me first. The car got colder even though the broken air conditioner was already making us all sweat. My younger brother kept frantically tapping buttons on his game console like the electronic sounds could somehow drown out the tension. My sister hummed softly to herself, still too young to understand that our family only sounded cheerful when strangers were watching. Diana jerked the car into a rest stop like she was parking the entire argument. Everyone out. Now. Outside, she didn't bother lowering her voice. She never did when she thought she held the moral high ground. Look at you, she said, gesturing at me like I was evidence in a trial. You can't even pretend to be happy for 2 seconds. You embarrass me constantly. I laughed, sharp and bitter, the sound cutting through the hot afternoon air. You embarrass yourself just fine without my help. Her face went hard as stone. She glanced past me toward the vending machines and the families walking casually in and out, making absolutely sure there were witnesses for whatever came next. Then she did something I never saw coming. Why don't we just leave her here? She said, not to me, but to the air itself, like I was a problem she was tired of carrying around. Maybe a little space will teach you what it actually means to be part of this family. Fine, I shot back. Leave me then. I meant it as a dare, a challenge to call her bluff and prove she wasn't actually capable of something so cruel. Diana didn't even blink. She yanked open the back door, grabbed my backpack, and shoved it hard into my arms. Sit on that bench, she commanded, pointing at a lonely spot under a flickering light pole. Think long and hard about what you've done. When you're finally ready to act like an actual member of this family, we'll come back for you. I watched her walk away, certain any second she would pause, turn around, admit she was only kidding. She didn't pause. She climbed into the driver's seat with mechanical precision. My brother still wouldn't look up from his screen. My sister stared at me with enormous eyes like she was watching a horror movie she wasn't old enough to see. I stepped forward, panic starting to rise. Mom, stop this. This is insane. Diana looked at me through the windshield with that calm, controlled expression she used on teachers and neighbors and anyone she needed to impress. Her lips moved deliberately. This is consequences. Then the car started rolling. At first it moved slowly, like she was giving me one final chance to sprint forward and beg for forgiveness. Then her foot pressed the gas, and the distance opened between us like a bleeding wound. I stood frozen on that concrete, hands gripping my backpack straps until my knuckles went white, watching my entire family disappear down the exit ramp and onto the highway. The first wave that hit me was pure disbelief. The second wave was blinding rage. The third wave was fear that I absolutely refused to name out loud. But here's what happened next that changed everything. I checked my phone with trembling hands. 1 red bar of battery, no charger, no cash in my pockets. Nothing. I walked into the restroom, splashed cold water on my burning face, and stared into the mirror like I could somehow talk myself into being older, tougher, safer than I actually was. My reflection looked like a scared kid pretending to be brave. I tried asking a woman by the sinks if she happened to have a phone charger I could borrow. She looked at me, then immediately looked away and muttered something about being in a hurry before rushing out. I tried the front desk next, but the clerk just shrugged and said the payphone outside hadn't worked in months, maybe years. I walked back outside and sat on that bench exactly like Diana had ordered, because some pathetic part of me still thought obedience might somehow summon her back. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. 20. No car appeared on that horizon. When my phone screen finally went completely dark, I felt the entire world tilt sideways beneath me. I had 2 choices: stay here and wait, praying my mother would remember she had a daughter, or I could move and take control of my own survival. The longer I sat there, the more I realized something absolutely sickening. She wasn't going to come back quickly because coming back quickly would mean admitting she'd gone way too far. And Diana never, ever admitted she was wrong. So I stood up. I looked at the faded sign pointing toward the next exit and read the distance out loud like speaking it made it manageable. 6 miles. Truck stop. Gas station. Lights. People. If I could just make it there, I could charge my phone. I could call someone who would actually believe me. I could stop being a lesson and start being a person again. I tightened my shoelaces with shaking fingers and started walking down that endless highway shoulder. The first mile ran purely on adrenaline. My anger kept my legs pumping forward, and every single time a car whooshed past, I imagined it was Diana coming back. And I hated myself for hoping, for still wanting her to prove she cared. By mile 2, the brutal heat started winning. My shirt stuck to my skin like plastic wrap. My throat felt like I'd swallowed sandpaper. I kept my eyes locked on the white line so I wouldn't look at the actual highway and picture my body broken on it. A horn suddenly blared and a massive truck roared past, so close it nearly knocked me off my feet. I stumbled, caught myself, and felt my heart slam violently against my ribs. That's when I truly understood how reckless this was, how dangerous, how wrong. 17 is old enough to argue back, old enough to have opinions, but nowhere near old enough to be safe alone on a highway with cars screaming past at 70 miles per hour. I pulled my dead phone out again just to hold something that felt like a lifeline, even though it couldn't save me. I thought about turning around, going back to that rest stop, asking strangers for help until someone finally cared enough to listen. But then I pictured Diana telling everyone her version later. She would exaggerate everything. She would claim I ran off. She would say I was being dramatic, unstable, impossible to handle. I needed proof. I needed my own version of the truth to exist somewhere outside her mouth. So I started taking mental pictures, memorizing everything. The rest stop name, the exact time on the big digital sign at the ramp, the precise words she'd said before driving away. By mile 3, my stomach cramped viciously. I slowed down, forced myself to breathe through the pain, and tried desperately not to panic. I made rules in my head to stay alive. Keep walking no matter what. Don't accept help from anyone who makes your skin crawl. If a car stops, stay on the other side of the guardrail. If a man gets out, don't get close. I laughed once, just a dry, broken little sound, because Diana would have called this paranoia. She never understood that I didn't feel safe in her world. And now I didn't feel safe in the real one either. Around mile 4, my feet started burning like they were on fire. My cheap sneakers weren't made for this, and I could feel blisters forming, raw and painful. I tried thinking about something else, anything else, but my brain just kept looping the same agonizing question. How could she do this to me? How could she leave me with the kind of silence that said I deserved it? When I finally hit mile 5, I saw the truck stop sign glowing in the distance. Relief hit me so hard it almost broke me. I swallowed down the tears. Cry later, survive now. Then, just before mile 6, everything changed. A semi-truck slowed behind me, and my entire body went rigid with fear. The truck stayed a few car lengths back, hazard lights blinking like a warning, matching my pace like it was studying me, deciding something. I moved closer to the guardrail and prepared to run if I needed to. The truck rolled to a stop ahead of me, angled so it actually blocked the shoulder from oncoming traffic, almost like protection. The driver door opened slowly. A man climbed down carefully, hands visible, not rushing or threatening. "Hey," he called out, keeping his voice normal and calm. "You okay out here?" I didn't answer. I backed up a step, every muscle ready to bolt. He nodded like he completely understood my fear. "I'm not getting any closer, I promise. I just saw you walking and figured you might need water. That's all I'm offering." He set a sealed bottle on the ground and stepped back, putting distance between us. Only then did I notice the small details that made him feel less threatening. A wedding ring, a company logo on his shirt, a dashboard camera visible inside the cab. Practical things. Real things. Not a stranger with nothing to lose. I took the bottle without crossing the space between us. The plastic was ice cold against my fingers. I twisted the cap and drank like my body had been waiting for permission to survive. "What's your name, kid?" he asked gently. "Maya," I said, and my voice cracked with exhaustion. "I'm Ron," he said. "Listen, I can call the police for you, or I can take you to the truck stop up there and we find someone official. Either way, you shouldn't be on this shoulder." The word police made my stomach flip. I didn't want drama, headlines, chaos. I didn't want Diana turning this into another story about how difficult and dramatic I was to handle. But I also knew something else deep in my bones. If I did nothing, she would do this again. Maybe not to me, but to someone smaller, someone weaker, someone who couldn't walk 6 miles. I pointed at his truck. How do I know you're safe? Ron nodded again like he'd expected exactly that question. Smart girl. Take a photo of my license plate. Take a photo of my face. Call whoever you trust when we get your phone charged. You sit on the passenger side with the door unlocked the whole time. If you don't like anything at all, you get out immediately. He even offered me his driver's license to hold while I decided. That's when the fear inside me shifted slightly. It didn't disappear, but it made room for something else I desperately needed: control. I took my own phone out, dead as a brick, and held it up like a camera anyway, pretending I was recording him. Ron didn't protest. He just waited patiently. Okay, I said finally. Truck stop. No detours. No detours, he agreed. Then he added something that nearly broke me. And Maya, I'm sorry. Whatever happened, you didn't deserve it. As I climbed into that cab, my legs shook. Not from the steps, but from the weight of the moment. I had walked 6 miles because my mother wanted to win an argument. Now I was sitting beside a stranger because I refused to lose my life. Ron parked under the brightest lights where other trucks lined up like a small temporary city. He didn't touch my backpack. He didn't ask invasive personal questions. He walked me straight to the counter and told the cashier very clearly, I found this kid on the highway. She needs a charger and a safe place to sit. The cashier looked at me, really looked, like she could see all the fear I was trying so hard to hide. She pulled a charging cord from a drawer and pointed to a booth near the window. Sit right there, honey. And you're not leaving until we figure this out properly. My hands shook violently as I plugged my phone in. The screen lit up with 1% battery like it was waking from a coma. Notifications flooded in all at once. No missed calls. No frantic texts. Nothing. Complete silence. That emptiness hit harder than the entire walk. Diana hadn't even tried to check on me. The lesson hadn't ended. It had barely started. Ron sat across from me but kept his distance, giving me space like he understood I needed room to breathe and think. I stared at my phone until it crawled up to 5%. Then I opened the dial pad with trembling fingers. I didn't call Diana. Not yet. I called the only number I could remember without my contacts. My best friend. She answered on the second ring. I didn't even say hello. I just said, I need you to listen, and then I told her everything in one breath before I could lose my nerve. There was a pause that felt like forever. Then her voice went sharp and fierce. Where are you? I'm calling my dad right now. We're calling the police. Don't you dare move. My chest tightened with panic. I don't want to get my mom arrested, I whispered. Maya, my friend said firmly, she left you on a highway. She already did the dangerous part. You're just telling the truth now. Tell me in the comments what you would do in this situation. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story below. You're not alone in this. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life, because what happened next changed everything. 15 minutes later, 2 patrol cars rolled into that parking lot. A female officer came inside first. She introduced herself calmly, asked my name, asked my age, asked if I was hurt. I answered like I was reciting facts about a complete stranger, my voice flat and distant. Then she asked the question that made my throat close completely. Who left you out there? I told her. My mom. Diana Allen. Saying my mother's name out loud to a police officer felt like the ultimate betrayal. Then I remembered the bench, the brake lights, the deliberate silence, and it stopped feeling like betrayal. It started feeling like accountability. The officer stepped outside to make calls. When she came back, her expression had changed, tightened with something that looked like anger held carefully in check. "Your mother is on the phone," she said quietly. "She wants to speak to you." My heart hammered against my ribs. I took the phone anyway, my hand shaking. "Maya," Diana said, calm as ever, like we were discussing dinner plans. "Where are you?" "A truck stop," I said. "6 miles from where you abandoned me." There was a breath. Then her tone turned annoyed, like I'd inconvenienced her schedule. "You were supposed to sit there and wait. You were supposed to think about your behavior." I gripped the phone so hard my fingers hurt. "I did think. I thought about how easy it was for you to drive away from your own daughter." "Don't be dramatic," she snapped. "You're making this bigger than it is. I was coming back for you." "When?" I asked. "After dinner? After you cooled off? After you proved your point?" Silence. The officer watched my face carefully, like she could tell exactly when the manipulation was happening, when the gaslighting was being deployed. Diana tried again, softer now, performing remorse because there was an audience she needed to convince. "Honey, just come home. We can talk about this. You've embarrassed me enough for one day." That last line was a gift because it proved what actually mattered to her. Not my safety. Her reputation. I handed the phone back to the officer. "I don't feel safe going back with her tonight," I said clearly, and I meant every single word. The officer nodded like she'd been waiting for exactly that answer. "Okay," the officer said gently. "We're going to do this properly and safely." She asked if there was another adult I trusted, a relative, a teacher, anyone at all who could help. I thought about all the women in my life. Most of them were connected to Diana by blood or loyalty, programmed to defend her by default. But one name came to mind, someone Diana didn't control: Mrs. Harper, my art teacher. The officer called her. To my complete shock, Mrs. Harper answered immediately, and within an hour she was there, hair pulled back, eyes fierce like she would fight the entire world for me if she had to. When she hugged me, I finally let myself breathe. Really breathe. But as we walked out together, I saw Diana's name written on a form the officer was holding. The words jumped out at me: child endangerment, investigation, official report. And I realized something profound in that moment. Diana's lesson was always about power. She thought she could take mine away whenever she wanted. Tonight, the power was changing hands for the first time in my life. The next weeks were ugly in a quiet, suffocating way. There were phone calls from numbers I didn't recognize. There were messages that swung wildly from sweet to absolutely furious when I didn't answer fast enough. There were relatives I barely knew leaving voicemails about forgiveness, as if forgiveness was a bill I owed and they were debt collectors. The police report didn't disappear the way Diana's problems usually did. A social worker interviewed me at school. Another one interviewed my siblings separately. Diana had to explain on official record why she thought abandoning a minor on a highway was acceptable parenting. She tried to rewrite everything, of course. She claimed I had run out of the car. She said I'd threatened to hurt myself. She said she was afraid of me. She said she'd only driven around the block. The officer had already checked the security cameras at the rest stop. The truth isn't flexible when it's recorded. Still, Diana never apologized. Not once. Not even a little. She blamed me for making her look bad. She blamed the officer for overreacting. She blamed Mrs. Harper for taking my side against family. She blamed everyone except the woman who'd been in the driver's seat. My father finally called, and his voice sounded exhausted, like he'd been losing battles in that house for decades. He asked me to come home so things could go back to normal. Normal, I thought bitterly. You mean you watching her hurt me and calling it peace? I told him I wasn't coming back. Ever. Mrs. Harper helped me file paperwork for temporary guardianship until I turned 18. She helped me find a part-time job. She helped me apply for scholarships and college programs. She didn't ask me to forgive anyone. She asked me what I wanted for my own life. The answer shocked me. I wanted Diana to understand that I wasn't hers to break anymore. So I made a decision that felt like swallowing broken glass. I cut them all off completely. I changed my phone number. I stopped checking the mailbox. I blocked social media accounts one by one until the silence was mine, not theirs. The day I turned 18, I signed my own lease on a tiny studio apartment and slept on the floor because I couldn't afford a bed yet. I was exhausted and terrified and happier than I'd ever been in that house. Years passed like pages turning. College classes, late-night work shifts, friends who became real family, therapy sessions that taught me a word Diana absolutely hated: boundaries. Every once in a while, I'd hear rumors through a friend of a friend. Diana telling people I was ungrateful. Diana telling people I was mentally unstable. Diana telling people she'd done everything she possibly could. I didn't correct her stories. I let the silence do what it always did: protect her from consequences. And then yesterday, after all that distance, after all those years of peace, a thick envelope appeared in my mailbox with handwriting I recognized like a scar that never fully healed. A baby shower invitation. Their names printed neatly on the return address like nothing had ever happened, like they had the right to reach back into my life whenever it suited them. I tore it up immediately. I swept the pieces into the trash. But later that night, I couldn't sleep because one torn invitation had brought the highway roaring back under my feet. And I realized something important. I was done being a lesson. I was finally ready to be the one teaching it. So I went to that baby shower. Not to ruin it, but to tell the truth in a room full of witnesses. I brought the police report. I brought my voice. I brought the power Diana thought she'd taken from me forever. When I walked through that door and said out loud what she'd done, when I made her admit it in front of everyone, when I watched her reputation crack and crumble, I didn't feel vengeful. I felt free. My sister Ava hugged me afterward, shaking and crying, and whispered, "Stay. Please stay." I shook my head gently. Not today. Today I needed to do one thing, and I did it. But I'll meet you tomorrow, just us, if you want. She nodded through her tears. I want that. I really want that. As I drove away from that house, I didn't go straight home. My hands just turned the wheel like they remembered something my mind had tried to forget. I ended up back at that rest stop, smaller now than my memory had made it. I walked to the bench under the light pole, the same spot or close enough. I sat down and let the air fill my lungs. 17-year-old me had sat here waiting for love that never came. Today, I sat here knowing I didn't need it anymore. I'd built my own. I stood up, brushed off my jeans, and walked back to my car without looking over my shoulder once. If you were me, would you forgive someone who abandoned you like that? Tell me honestly in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story below. You're not alone in this. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life, because your voice matters. Your truth matters. And you deserve to be heard.